It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is Bruce Solheim, another author and professor. Welcome to the show, Bruce.
Oh, thanks, Tim. Glad to be here.
So you teach. What do you teach, Bruce? First of all, and then about your books. But I mean, I'm curious. What sort of stuff do you teach at your school?
Well, I teach at Citrus College in Southern California. And I teach history, which includes, U.S. history, early and modern U.S. history, and also the Vietnam War. Those are the courses that I have been teaching for the past 20 years here at Citrus College. And I just started teaching, which relates to, I started teaching a new course, which relates to the book that I just came out with. Timeless. I teach a paranormal course, which just started this fall semester. We finished up this semester, but I'll be offering it every semester. So that's the new thing I'm teaching. Other than that, it's the same U.S. history survey courses I've been doing for over 20 years. Okay. And the Vietnam course here and there.
Yes. But I'm really curious about this paranormal course, though. Now you mention it. Is that paranormal history then?
It's Paranormal Personal History. So I just made it up from the book, that we used my book as a textbook, I guess, of sorts, or a discussion starter. So the book's called Timeless, A Paranormal Personal History. So it's a nice marriage of my interests in the paranormal, but within a personal history kind of format. So we had 35 students, and we made time every once a week during our class period to share, experiences. And I try to provide a theoretical framework for all the different experiences and help them classify them. Because a lot of people have experiences, but they don't know what it is, called, or what other people say it is, or what testing has been done, or what kind of science is behind it, if any. And so that's kind of what we do. It's kind of an open forum part of the class anyway. And it's a great class. I could have had 100 students. I had to limit it to 35 to keep it somewhat intimate. You don't want to have like a whole stadium full of people, but there's a ton of interest in it.
Well, yeah, that's a fascinating subject. Yeah. So is it like, not only would you cover things like apparitions that people see?
Oh, sure.
But also, do you do anything with dreams?
Yeah. We talk about dreams, and we talk about lucid dreaming. We talk about, for instance, precognitive dreams. Like I had one on the morning of 9/11, and I thought I was the only one. And then I found out, doing a lot of reading and research, that there were lots of people around the world who had a precognitive dream that morning. So it's a phenomena that is not totally, or not really well understood, but it's certainly been documented. And, I cover that. We cover telekinesis, moving things with your mind, that type of stuff. Telepathy, which is what classic ESP type stuff, where you read people's thoughts or whatever. And apparitions, of course, ghosts, demons, angels, you name it. We cover everything.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the precognitive dreams, because I had quite a few of those that I feel like... I mean, but often they're very far in advance, and so I don't even know what's going to happen until I'm like, wow, snap my fingers, it's like deja vu. But I know I could even see in a dream journal a lot of the time where I dreamed it was, and it was like 6 months to a year in advance a lot of the time.
I mean, that's really my what I've determined is that the paranormal is really normal for most people, even if they don't realize it. At the very least, they have intuition, which they just think that's not paranormal. That's intuition, right? My gut feeling. No, that is paranormal. Classic, idea. This idea that you can sense something before it happens, that you should be on guard or whatever. That is paranormal. It's really, paranormal is normal. It's just kind of overcoming the woo-woo factor. It's like, this is crazy or whatever. And people are, it's interesting because when I came out with the book, I've never done it before. And I've been just doing standard history stuff, foreign policy, women's leadership, that type of stuff. Vietnam War book, even a textbook from my modern U.S. course. But this was a total departure, and I was a little bit afraid that how it would be accepted by my colleagues and by the administration, frankly, And but what's been interesting. It was totally accepted, and evidence of that is that the administration lets me do a paranormal course, so that tells you something. And well, I think they knew it was, it'd never been offered. They knew it was going to be something that people would be interested in. So I think that helps. And they trusted me to do it. And my colleagues have been very supportive. In fact, the first class I had, of the 35, I had 2 of my colleagues take the class. So, and what I found is that even people who didn't take the class, they feel like they can talk to me. Like they'll come up to me and say, you know what, I've had this experience. And so I'm like a safe person to talk to about their experiences, where they might not necessarily bring it up in regular conversation with other people at the office or at the school or whatever. So I think that safe environment is what attracts people to the class. And I think what attracts them to the book is that, here's this just regular guy. I mean, yeah, I'm a professor or whatever, but I haven't been like an astrologer or a psychic my whole life or whatever. I have been psychic my whole life, by the way, but not. I just recently came out of the paranormal closet, I guess is the way you look at it. Oh, yeah. I've heard other persons say that, and I thought that was pretty cool. That's kind of what it is. Just saying, okay, this is what I've been up to since I was 4 years old. I just didn't want to tell anybody, but now I'm telling you what's going on. And so you'd be surprised how many people just come up and say, yeah, man, I had this experience, and can you help me understand it? What's going on here? So.
Yeah. It's not like you were a ghost hunter. You don't have this prior investment in that sense.
I don't. I'm not a ghost hunter.
Is in a more grounded field, I guess not more grounded. That's the wrong way to think about it, probably.
But it's not. Yeah,
it's more accepted.
I mean, I do watch those ghost hunting shows. I think they're quite entertaining, and sometimes they're pretty spooky. But that's really not what I do. I'm interested in that, but I tend to shy away from the more negative kinds of things. I don't want to seek those kinds of experiences because I'm very sensitive, and I have been since I was 4 years old. So, and I don't really call it ghost hunting. For me, it's more like meeting ghosts. Just getting to encounter them, but not. I don't want to have an adversarial relationship because that could lead to some not so good results.
Well, that's probably a good way to think about it. Yeah. I'm not personally, I've never really experienced any ghost stuff, any apparitions or anything. But I can't imagine wanting to get involved with that if you thought ghosts were dangerous or scary, or if we're planning to confront them. Like that just seems like a bad idea.
Well, I can understand Yeah, I can understand the excitement, and of course, there's a lot of interest. And I mean, these shows get produced, and these people, I don't blame people wanting to get out there and get their name known and, make a living. I mean, everybody's entitled to a living, but I think there's an element of danger there that maybe some people don't quite understand. I see some things when they start playing around with like rituals that they don't, I go, oh my God, did they know what they're doing? They're opening up all kinds of things, inviting things in that I don't think they realize what can happen. It's I feel the same way about Ouija boards. I don't play around with those things. I just think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, and don't yank the chain. Don't tug on the paranormal element.
Yeah. In fact, the most important part of being psychic, which I am, and actually I have mediumship abilities too, is being able to turn it off. Actually, is the biggest issue, because you want to be able to sleep. You want to be able to, just live your regular life, go outside and work in the garden or something. You don't want to be encountering the paranormal 24/7. I think that could lead to some kind of insanity or something. So the cool thing is that my wife, Ginger, she's very grounded in a sense. There's that word. I think it's a good word actually for explaining what's going on here. She helps, I'll tell her, I had this conversation with this person who's passed away, and they told me these things. She'll go, okay, that's fine, but can you help me move this box over to, and I'm thinking, that's good. I think that's really good. It's not that she doesn't believe me. It's just that she doesn't have those experiences. So, she lets me do my thing, and she does her thing. And so I think that's good.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I want to say though that it does sound, the difficulty of switching off.
Mm-hmm.
The mediumship, the psychic
Mm-hmm.
ability
Mm-hmm.
type stuff. That does actually remind me. I mean, I don't know if I've ever really identified.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I obviously, like I said, I've had precognitive experiences going back to probably when I was 11, at least. But what I was thinking, but I've never really identified as an individual who sees it as psychic, right? I've never thought about it that way. But I guess when I'm trying, but as a writer, I write fiction, right? And I've been writing fiction since I was, most of my life now.
Yeah.
So
I know where you're going with this. Your characters speak to you, right?
Well, no, not exactly, because I'm also autistic. Yeah? It takes a long time for me to get to know my characters.
Yeah. Okay.
Just like anybody else. It takes me forever to get to know people. Yeah. And to get comfortable with a given person, but it also takes me a long time with the characters. But moreover, I'm kind of always on, even when I'm not writing. That's the issue.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I mean, it's like, and it gets to be kind of stressful because I'm like, I should be writing. I mean, that's my job. Why am I not doing that? Even when I should just be relaxing, right? And I think there's a parallel there. That's all I was going to get at.
There definitely is. The things that you're accessing, especially in fiction, but the things that you're accessing are similar to what a person who's intuitive or psychic or whatever would be doing. You're accessing something, whether you know it or not, that is in a different realm, and you're pulling stuff down, and stuff is flowing down to you as you're writing, and you get in the zone. People say different things like "I'm in the zone," or I've been writing for 10 hours. I didn't even know the time went by. Stuff like that. And that's very much what it is. But you do have to shut it down every once in a while because just to get that breather and to change, get a change of pace. I do like to work like that. When I'm really on, I like to get it as much done as possible and just ride that wave all the way. I make it kind of like surfing. You catch that great wave. You don't want to jump off the board until you want to take it all the way into the shore. So that's kind of how I look at it. But it is important to when you do need your rest or you need to change up, to be. I picture actually an old-fashioned radio and just mentally reaching over to the old-fashioned radio and turning the knob off. Turning it off and say, okay, I'm turning it off now. I need a break. Okay, you guys, I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be back tomorrow around 6 or whenever I get up, and we'll chat again. We'll pick it up there.
Oh yeah. No, I think that's cool. I like
and
that.
You think if you look at people like Ibsen, he had a very, I'm not Ibsen in that, he had a set schedule. I mean, he'd be in the middle of a play with his pen to paper, and it would be like 1:00, and he put the pen down, no matter mid-sentence, whatever, he put the pen down, and he got up, put on his top hat, that funny top hat he had, and the overcoat, and he'd walk down to the local bar and have his beer. That's just what, and it was like clockwork. People used to be on the sidewalks in Oslo because his flat was right near the king's palace there, one of the palaces, and he'd walk on the side. People knew, oh, there he comes Ibsen, and he's going always to the same place, the Grand Café on Karl Johan Street, and they'll be lining the streets watching him because he was towards the end of his life, he was a big hero, cultural hero. But yeah, that's funny that he could just completely turn it off. I mean, just put that pen down and walk away.
Yeah. I mean, and I've also heard about this. I forget which author. She wrote some nonfiction book that I can't remember the title, but I heard an interview with her recently on the Creative Pen podcast. But it was about, and it was this thing about personifying the different challenges or parts of your personality that want different things. So there's the part for example, the part of me that just wants to just goof off all day and play video games. That side is an example of somebody of whatever you add, or the side that only wants to write books. There's all these different people that kind of mess with. It feels like there's multiple people living inside me, but that's not like not in the creepy way, right? It's just natural. It's just all these different motivations that that people have, not just me, obviously. Do you think the personifying of those has any tie-in with paranormal stuff? I don't really know. I think to me it feels like a tool. Like I can put this guy in a box, a lot like your radio thing. Like, it's a mental tool that helps me switch out on and off of those different.
You have. Well, one of the things they say with mediumship is that you got to get out of your own way and just let it flow to you. And I think when you're really in the zone for writing, it's flowing to you. It's flowing to you. I would say it's from. It's really from. People would say your muse, or whatever classic term you use, but it's coming from the great collective unconscious, or as Jung would call it, or the spirit world, or whatever, the great beyond. I think a lot that stuff is flowing, and it's the knowledge of all of humanity for all time, and part of that's genetic, and so the different aspects of your personality are genetic, and I think that it all ties in together. So I find it, like, I'll just give you an example. I just wrote a story for I've actually written my second timeless book. It'll come out next year. And then I'm working on my third one. So I'm always a couple books, ahead. But I was just doing something, just driving my son back from school. And right in the middle of a road was a hawk, a dead hawk, a beautiful hawk. It was a red-tailed hawk. And the idea of, making sure that his body doesn't get desecrated. And I felt so close to this animal. It's because I've seen the red-tailed hawks in our neighborhood, and I picked it up, put it in a box, put it in the back of my truck, took it home, called Fish and Wildlife, called the Humane Society. And out of all that stuff, it stirred up all these past memories of this hawk family that lives in our neighborhood. And I know this is one of the hawks from that family, probably the elder, because he was a big old hawk. And I wrote a story, and it just came out, in its entirety. And it'll be part of the the third book. And so just an everyday experience of driving to it just literally falls into your lap, and there it is. And as a writer, when something's important, when something is of great value that needs to be put to paper, pen to paper or fingers to keyboard or whatever that we do. That's partly intuition, because I think people who aren't writers or don't usually do that, they don't understand the significance of sometimes of things. And so it might not even be that dramatic, like a dead hawk in the road, which is kind of unusual. It could be something much more subtle, but it has great significance because you tie it in to this flow that's coming from the collective unconscious. So yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. I don't know.
No, that's really cool. I really think that's and that parallels a lot of what I've experienced. I mean, just with being creative, and because when I the first, it probably not so much with the Pillar Universe, which is my upcoming series, because that series that came out when that idea came to me when I was maybe 8 or 9, so 20 years ago or so, and. Or maybe even older than that, because it was shortly after I watched Star Wars the first time. It might have been as young as 7. But because this is a space opera series, but it's in this weird universe that's very different from our universe in physical terms. It's a different shape, basically, focused on different kind of environments and stuff.
Right.
But that one, I'm like. And I guess my point with this is not to just carry on about this thing, which I really do love, but is that I don't know if I'd be able to come up with that idea again. It feels like that idea, like if I hadn't had it then, I was never going to have it. It was one of those kind of ideas.
Yeah, well, I
worry about that sometimes. Just once, go on. Yeah.
No, I was going to tell you something that a very wise man. When I decided to start writing plays, I had a big problem because I'd never written plays before. So that's a pretty steep learning curve. I mean, I've done all this other writing, historical writing, short stories, poetry, all that kind of stuff. But I songs, but a play, that's a different creature altogether. And I took a class at Cal State LA, and I had a professor, Jose Cruz Gonzalez, and I always worried about that, losing these things. And he said, what you need to do is just capture the butterflies, and then just put them in a safe place. And then later that you bring them up again, take a look at them. He said, you can just capture these butterflies, because a lot of these things are just like floating around, and you just capture them, put them in a safe place, write it down so you remember later, and it'll come back to you. And some of those things will fully develop for you, and they have, for me, they've developed into plays, short stories, parts of the, other things that I've written, or, I mean, that's just how it happened. And I love that idea of capturing butterflies. Not necessarily hurting the butterfly, but capturing.
No, but not you're not a lepidopterist, because you need them alive.
A live capture.
They're not very useful if you.
It has to.
They're not useful as a living creature. They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
And ideas are very much alive. That's how they seem to be anyway, because they change.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like the more time you spend with an idea, the more you understand it, but also the more it grows.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I agree. And I see, you've pointed out some of these parallels between the, paranormal experiences and writing. I think there's a lot of parallels, an awful lot of parallels. And I think that probably the biggest one, I already mentioned it, this, getting out of your own way, trying not to control every aspect, just let it flow. And later you can do all the editing tricks that, and all that stuff, but you got to get it out of there, let it flow. Because if you stop the flow to like, well, I don't like this word choice here, oh my gosh, you might lose that, that butterfly might escape. You don't, and you might not, like you said, you might not get it back, so.
Yeah. And the thing is, and the best, and you make such a good point there, because, and I've just recently been editing a lot, because I have 150,000 words of Pillar Universe stories of this story that needs to be edited.
Yeah.
And I'm only 25,000 in, so there's a long way to go yet. Yeah. But even just editing the first 25,000 last week was really enlightening as to how, because that book was the first. It is November as we record this, and is in National Novel Writing Month. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, so this was the only time I've ever succeeded at National Novel Writing Month was when I wrote the first 50,000 words of this story in that month a few years ago. And I noticed that the book, that the prose is kind of bad. Like, it's not bad. It's because that's what I got to dispel that feeling. It's very quick and dirty. It doesn't. It's not pretty, and it doesn't do a whole lot except for be there and represent what needs to be there. And now I have to change it to present a better face, as I edit it. But that's easy enough. The key is to get the story down and get the right story down, the true story.
Yeah.
And I just now am realizing this because I'm editing and writing more or less at the same time. I do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And it's weird to think about, because lately I'd fallen into this trap of editing too much as I went, and for me, that's definitely a bad idea. And there's no writing advice that's absolute, but for me, it doesn't work, because it does, like you're saying, it hurts the flow state. It kind of freezes it, the butterfly escapes.
Yeah. I think it is. I mean, yeah, you are right. Everybody's different in their style of writing and how they do it. One of my favorite stories is the old Civil War writer Shelby Foote, who's related to the playwright. What was his name? Foote, Foote. I'll think of it in a minute. But anyway, Shelby Foote was a Civil War historian, and how he wrote was with quill and ink, an inkwell on paper, and never edited. He wrote what ultimately became his book. He would wait until it was the perfect prose in his head, and then put it onto page. And I thought, oh, I could never do that. I could never.
It would take forever.
It would take too long. And this Civil War series that he wrote, there's like 3 volumes, and they're all like 3.5 inches thick. It's amazing. But he claims that's how he wrote. And then I remember the story about a guy who was the preeminent Pearl Harbor historian. I mean, I can't remember his name now, but he had so much research notes and outlines and stuff, and he was going to write the definitive book on Pearl Harbor, right? But the dude died before he wrote it because he just kept researching. And here's another thing, if you don't even put pen to paper to begin with, even take a chance, you just feel like, well, I haven't done enough research yet. I got to keep doing the research. So I always sometimes I put the cart ahead of the horse and I start writing before I've completed the research. And I think you can do them at the same time. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, at least for me. I mean, everybody's a little different how they write, but I've always been afraid of losing those butterflies or losing the momentum or actually physically losing my notes, all those things can happen. There's all these pitfalls in writing, or, now with our computers and losing files and all those nightmarish kind of situations.
Oh, boy, yeah. Got to back up frequently. Every writer out there needs to know that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. I think this has been reminding me a lot of actually some poetry I learned. I read back for school. It was first off, it was the Fairy Queen, Edmund Spencer. What you just mentioned about the Pearl Harbor historian reminded me of that, because that's the Fairy Queen's an incomplete epic poem because Edmund Spencer died while writing it. And it was going to be a double epic. It was supposed to be, he had this huge idea. It was going to be a giant Arthurian epic, 24 volumes long. And I mean, luckily for English students who aren't super involved, there are only 6 volumes, I think. Actually complete. Which is, I mean, it's really a shame because his outline was all there and he was writing in exile. It was this kind of funny, it's kind of funny in a really sad way, right? It's kind of a Shaggy Dog story, because he was write the greatest epic of all, so I'll be brought out of exile by the Queen. He wrote it for the Queen. Yeah. And he never completed it. Yeah. But the other one I had in mind that goes back more to what we've been talking about with the paranormal reminds me. It reminded me of William Blake. The line the eternity is in love with the productions of time. And that's one of the, I mean, because I wonder a lot about afterlife type stuff. I worry about that a lot. Probably more than is reasonable, and that's one of those things, because as an artist, as a creative of any kind, anyone who writes stuff down or paints or does anything makes a product, a product of time. I wonder. I know, because I know it's common. It's often. I mean, a lot of people have said, they're channeling something else. It comes from beyond. But what if it's the other way around? Do you think there's a side of it that's the other way around, where we create stuff almost for the entertainment of beyond?
Well, I think the folks that are no longer in this physical realm are quite entertained by us, and our futile efforts, But for the most part, these are, the people that I've been in contact with. I call them my spiritual team or guides or whatever. They're extremely helpful, and the idea that I get from them, and they've told me, and I can tell through their responses, is that it is a beautiful existence that they have in that spirit world. They don't have a body to have to worry about or fret about, or they don't have the same concerns we do. And basically what it is just pure love, which is what we all strive for, but we work so hard and we don't get out of our own way, back to that old saying, and it is all around us, not to borrow the phrase from Love Actually, but that movie, but it is, and we don't often recognize it, but the people that are, the spirits that are in the spirit world, that's what they have. With the exception of those who are, the demonic stuff, the negative stuff, which also is in that realm. But as one of my spirit friends told me, they live in a different zip code, which I thought, they didn't mention the word hell, which I thought was refreshing, because you hear that heaven and hell all the time. But instead you hear, they live in a different zip code. And that's one of the questions you would ask, I asked when I first made contact recently was, and started doing this more often was, what happens to the bad people here on Earth? And they're not in a good place. They're in this, in a different zip code than we are. So we know who they are, and we don't really interact with them. And they have their own problems they have to deal with. They have to come back several times and try it over again and all that kind of stuff. So whereas other people, I think, have choices, more choices. And but the whole thing is so fascinating. You can talk for hours about it, but what's interesting to me here is how you're making the parallels to the writing process, which I guess I should have done, but you're kind of you're helping me kind of see that, because I've been a writer since I was a little kid too. So as long as I've been experiencing paranormal stuff, I've been writing. So, but you were mentioning William Blake, and the old '60s group, The Doors. That's where they took their name from a quote by William Blake. What was it? If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. That's where they get the name for the.
Oh, that's beautiful. Man, I love William Blake. He was one of my favorite poets that I studied. Yeah. But but we are actually out of time. So
I know.
Thank you for being on the show.
That's what happens when you're having fun. The time just flies by.
Oh yeah, no kidding. And someone, we don't have an eternity to talk. So tell people where they can find your work and what the book is again.
Sure. Yeah, the book is called Timeless: A Paranormal Personal History, and you can get it on the big old Amazon and other online retailers. It is, if you want to know more about me or stuff I've written and things I'm up to, if you want to know about my mediumship and all that stuff, it's all at BruceOlavSolheim.com. And that's my first name, Bruce, middle name Olav, that's OLAV, Solheim, SOLHEIM.com, BruceOlavSolheim.com. And so that's where you can see what I'm doing.
Thanks very much. This has been a really interesting interview and a little bit non-standard for me.
There you go.
I'm glad for it. It's
the definition
amazing.
of my life, non-standard. There you go. Thank you, Tim. I enjoyed it.
Oh, you're welcome. And as for this show and for me, you can find this podcast and all my other work at mentalcellarpublications.com. I just recently updated the book pages. So the old books are out and the new books are in. You can dig up the Spells of the Curtain series, which is my current fantasy series, and look for the upcoming Pillar Universe books in the very near future. So, the first book anyway. Those will not all be coming out at once. Don't worry about that. So thanks for listening, everybody. .com, and I will talk to you next week.
That tears it.